Son asked you recently, hey, Pop, why did you join the Marine Corps? At our last interview, you sort of talked a little bit about that, how that was the most interesting part of your career, and then we floated into lawyer stuff and everything else. So, what was your answer to your son?
Well, I said, name is Mike. You have to go back a little bit to the 50s. Mm-hmm. We had what was called a police action. If you were over there, it was called a war, Korea. And at that time, the draft was in effect. And I did reading like everybody else and saw the television, saw what was happening, saw what the press told us. And my thinking at that time was the Army was really getting clobbered. They had gone into post-WW2, and the articles indicated the training had dropped off, physical conditioning had dropped off, and they couldn't compete very well against the North Koreans. And I didn't like that. And then they sent over some Marines. I'll call it a regimental combat team. And they were, in the articles that I read, looked upon as the fire team. The enemy was doing something really bad to us in one area, they'd send the Marines over. The Marines would put out the fire, and then they go someplace else. And they said that was because the Marines had continued their physical conditioning, continued their simulated combat during those peacetime years. And then General MacArthur came up with the idea, we have to do something to get out of this Pusan perimeter. And he came up with the idea to invade North Korea. And the Navy said, no, you can't do that. All of the armed services, you can't do that. It's a terrible place, Incheon. It's one of the places that had the highest level of surf, 30 feet. And you said you have a very, very short space of time to go in. If you don't get your men in and the boats in, you've got mud. The Navy got the Marines in. They went through Seoul. And that was the beginning of the North Koreans leaving South Korea. I was impressed with that. And they kept going north. And eventually they took the Marines and put them on the East Coast. And they were advancing up the East Coast of North Korea. They were on the west side of the Chosin Reservoir. And I'm sure young people have no idea what the Chosin Reservoir was, but it was a reservoir. And it was wintertime. And the 1st Marine Division at this time had the west side. Army troops were on the east side. Chinese communists came in with apparently 300,000 troops. And they surrounded the Marines, they surrounded the Army, and they basically wiped out the Army troops. And at one point, 2 regiments of the Marines were together. Chinese went after them. They finally got the 3rd Regiment together. And then they started going south. And somebody said, oh yeah, you Marines, you're retreating. The general's name was Smith, O.P. Smith. He said, retreat hell. We're just attacking in a different direction. And I said, that's what I would like. I didn't want to be drafted. I knew too many guys that had been drafted, they didn't like it. If you're going to be someplace they force you to be and you don't want to be there, you're not going to do as good as if you really wanted to be there. So I said, I'll try to join the Marines. And I did. They took me. There was more of me then than there is now. They sent me down to Quantico for the indoctrination course. I was a jelly belly, 205 pounds, 38-inch waist. I came out in 3 months at 164, 32-inch waist. It happened to all of the fat guys. they just ran it off of you. And I can remember about the third or fourth day we had our new clothing. They said, okay, we're going to go for a hike tomorrow. Take your boots and put them in the shower. Fill them up with water. I've never heard of that before. But we all did it. And we had boondockers, which were the low cut. And then the other ones were high cut. And we went for a hike. It was about a 6-mile hike. I thought I'd have blisters and sore feet. That water soaking into the leather overnight, not a problem. Pretty smart. Maybe the Army did it too, I don't know. But I went through the basic school. Then we had, I went through the OCC. Then I went through basic school. And it was a great atmosphere. In the first 3 months, we were all learning everything. We didn't know anybody. Everybody seemed to want to help. We all wanted to be good Marines, learn what we had to learn. And I can tell you, after all these years, the names of my DIs. DI is short for drill instructor. I had Sergeant Marquardt and Sergeant Weckerly. At that time, they did not use Social Security number. My number was 070005, sir. And my rifle number, 1527220, sir. And I can remember Sergeant Marquardt getting up one day in front of a whole lot of us. And he had an accent that I can't repeat, but he said, you boys have got college smarts. I have got Marine Corps smarts. Your smarts don't count anymore. Marine Corps smarts count. It was a good time. And we had a lot of fun, a lot of work. I can remember we went to a basketball game. Marines had a basketball team. They had a football team. And we marched down to the stadium. And we sat for a while. The game comes on, the game comes over. And we want to go back to the barracks. We've had a whole day of work, night game. And everybody has to go out before us candidates. We're waiting and waiting and waiting. Finally, one of the more brave candidates said, no, didn't say it, he said, here we sit like birds in the wilderness, birds in the wilderness, birds in the wilderness. And then a couple of hundred Marines like us, we all started singing it. The DIs, they just busted up laughing. They turned around, they couldn't laugh, they couldn't look at us anymore. But finally, we walked out. And another memory, a commanding officer was a captain, Captain Gentili. And he either didn't like what we were doing or he was trying to stimulate us. So we got put into an auditorium and he's up on a stage saying, you people, and he had a whole bunch of things that we were doing wrong. Wrong this. There's a problem around here. We're going to get rid of that problem. There's a bottleneck here. We're going to get rid of the bottleneck. We're all shaking as quiet. Voice from the back. And every bottle that I've seen, the neck is at the top. Again, do we laugh? Do we duck? We all started laughing. He started laughing. He just walked off the platform. So it was a tough life, but it was also a productive life. Yeah. So I wanted to go to the West Coast. I wanted to get away from the East Coast. Went to California. And we were entitled to 30 days leave a year. We arranged it so we would get to California on Friday. I would check in. That would end my leave, so I would not lose 2 days of leave, Saturday and Sunday. Excuse me. I did check in. And they said, come back on Monday, we'll assign you to your unit. So I went in Monday morning, probably 8 o'clock, And they said, where do you want to go? I said, I want to go to the 5th Marines. That's a regiment. Okay. So they sent me out. Maybe it's 10 o'clock. I get there. I walk in. I introduce myself. They say, oh, come and see the colonel. So I saw the colonel. And he said, well, we're doing night work this week. Come on back about 6 o'clock, and I'll have your company commander here. We'll introduce you to your platoon. Okay. So I get back, and I meet my platoon for the first time. I try to let them know I'm a pretty good guy. And they're probably all laughing. And we look at the maps, and we're told what the program is going to be. And the function of the platoon leader at that time would, my troops are from here to there, and I would be going back and forth, back and forth. We go out, and we're in mountains. I don't know anybody but one guy by name. I couldn't see, and I'm trying to go back and forth to keep control. And all of a sudden, I'm the only guy there. I think they were trying to show the lieutenant that he wasn't that important. I think they all sort of went and hit on me. And I'm out there yelling, Sergeant Carlson, Sergeant Carlson. Well, we eventually got together, and we had a good time eventually. But that could happen in combat. You show up and they say, this is what we're doing, or here they come. Get ready. Well, that was okay. Eventually, all the military sends people to school. And at a certain point, I got told, okay, it's your turn. You're going to school. You're going to go to Atomic, Biological, and Chemical Warfare School. Treasure Island, up in San Francisco, Oakland Bay. So I went to school and came back, and I'm a platoon leader again. And then I get called into the colonel's office. He said, you're going on temporary duty. Me? You and your platoon. You're going up to a place called Camp Desert Rock, Nevada. Okay. Why am I going up there? Well, they're going to detonate an atomic bomb. And they want to have people up there to see what kind of effect it may have on them. Me. So they bust us up, 30 of us, and we had enough clothes for 3 or 4 days. And it comes the day that they're going to detonate the bomb. They bust us to the drop area. It wasn't being dropped, it was up on a tower. They had trenches. They're about 5 foot deep. Get out of the bus, get in the trenches, stay down until we tell you to come up. And we're down in the trenches. Then they start the countdown, like you see the things go up. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Misfire, misfire. Stay down in the trenches. Do not get up. Stay down in the trenches. Oh, God. Nobody knows what's going to happen that I know of. Eventually, they said it could have been an hour. The buses are on the way. When the buses are here, move quickly and get in the buses. We moved quickly. And we're back to where we had our tents. And that was frightening. You're walking along, and nobody knows if it's going to go off. They don't know why it misfired. I learned later it was a 17 kiloton equivalent TNT. It was on a 500-foot tower. We were 10 miles away. And well, we thought, okay, we'll go home now, back to Camp Pendleton. The word got passed, no. You're going to be rescheduled. I got a wife, I got a kid. I got to stay in the tent. It was like 90 to 100 degrees every day. Yeah. We were scheduled to go off, to have the bomb go off again in about 2 weeks. We didn't have enough clothes. We didn't have any money. They fed us. And I didn't have to go in the trench the second time. I got assigned to be the escort for a newscaster named John Daly. I don't know if you're that old.
I remember the name John Daly,
Yeah. I was the expert. Compared to him, I was the expert. So he would ask me questions, and I, by this time, knew it was 10 miles away, and it was a 17 kiloton bomb. And they gave us eyeglasses, thick glasses. They said, turn around. Do not look until we tell you to turn around. Continue. And eventually, boom, it went off. And we were not told to turn around yet. So, and people have asked me, did you see the mushroom cloud? No, I didn't. It got light. This is probably 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. So at a certain point, we could turn around. But before we turned around, I felt like what I thought would a blowtorch would feel on my neck. Terrifically hot, 10 miles away. Then we could turn around, had these glasses over our eyes, and by this time it's getting light. And what I saw was the sand on the desert rising up, coming towards us. And then the wind, and the ground shook 10 miles away. That was frightening. But then we were all done, got back in the buses, went back to Camp Pendleton.
What did John Daly think of all this?
Well, I don't remember.
Yeah.
He didn't have, as I remember, he didn't have hardly any questions. They probably had a handout they had given him.
Yeah.
But that was an experience. And then I went back, and eventually I got another set of orders. In between, I had gone to an Army school for atomic, biological, and chemical warfare in Anniston, Alabama. Then I got orders to become the officer in charge of the atomic, biological, and chemical warfare school for the 1st Marine Division. So I went out, I did that, and on occasion I would see my commanding officer, and people were asking me, what's he like? Oh, he's a nice guy. Squared away. Why do you ask? I didn't ask right away, but they said, why are you asking me about him? He was a major. There's lots of majors around. Don't you know who he is? Yeah, sure, he's Major Schreier. Don't you know who Major Schreier is? Not beyond the fact he's my commanding officer. He was the Marine that led the platoon to the top of Suribachi when they put, well, actually about 2 flags. Most Americans don't know that there were 2 flag raisings. His platoon, there were around 40 of them, they carried up a flag, and there was not much opposition because the Navy was shelling the mountain at the same time the Marines were walking up. But they got up and they put the flag up, and somebody of a high rank, either on board ship or down on the land, said, we have to have a bigger flag. They can't be seen. So then they took a bigger flag, and some more Marines brought it up to the top, and that's the flag that was raised, the picture taken by Joe Rosenthal, which eventually became the Marine Memorial near Washington. And they have the flag, and I'm told that they have 13 hands on the shaft. There were 6 Marines. There's a question now as to if they really had the right people. 3 of them died on Iwo Jima. All the rest died shortly after. The son of one of them wrote the book, Flag of Our Fathers. And I think the last one, not the last one, there was an Indian boy. He died. And he said, allegedly, we went in with 270 troops in my unit. 70 came out alive. They had over 7,000 Marines killed. So that was bad. So all of those things happened before I went in the Marine Corps. But I felt...
And you met this Major Schreier, right?
Oh, I met him, yeah. Oh, yes, there's a story on him I'll tell.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would, on occasion, go in. There were 3 schools, non-commissioned officer school, ABC school, and cooks and bakers school. And we had the 3 officers in charge. And on occasion, we would go in, we'd meet with a major, and we'd find out what the schedule was for the next 2 months or 3 months. I got to be very good friends with the officer in charge of the NCO school, and we went almost every day to the cooks and bakers school. And on the days that they were having steak for lunch, we'd have steak for lunch. And I didn't tell Betty when I got home I've already had a steak dinner. And almost every day we'd get cookies or things. And that was sort of interesting. And we had an inspection on occasion. And I had made some changes. We were working with tear gas to indoctrinate the troops. Didn't do a very good job because it was all outdoors. I said, we can't do that. We have to do it different. So I went through the procedure, ordered a tent, got a tent, and the major had to come out to see how it was working. That was fine. And then we had to learn how to decontaminate tanks and trucks. And we didn't have any tanks or trucks. So I went through the procedure and got an old, like a Higgins boat that brought the boys in. We were going to have another inspection. And the major came out, and he came out with a general. Oh, God. To me, as a lieutenant, a major was somebody you didn't monkey around with. But the general came. His nickname was Brute. He went through Annapolis, allegedly, probably true, 5'4", 115 pounds, square, and he was a general, so he had to be a squared away Marine. And the joke was that to get in, he had a friend take like a 2x4 and hit the top of his head, so he got to be a little bit taller. It's a great story. I don't think it was true. And I met the general, and I realized I had met the general before in civilian clothes. We went to the same church. And we walk out, how you doing? He probably figured I was an enlisted man or a lieutenant. Oh, I'm fine, how are you? Nice day, that's all. And then I saw him with his 2 stars up here. But he was just a friendly fellow. He had 3 boys. One of them became commandant of the Marine Corps. I never met him. But there were a lot of good experiences. And I'm glad I went in the Marine Corps.
Well, it said, just to complete the thought process, one day I requested permission to see Major Schreier, which was given. I walked into his office. I will never forget his first words.
Warren, what do you want now? Well, this is 1957. And I didn't say, I didn't call him by his name, of course. I said, I'd like to transfer to the 2nd Division. What do you want to go to the 2nd Division for? Well, the word was that the Marines were going into Lebanon. And you're in the Marine Corps, something different, little shooting. I said, I want to go because they're going to ship some Marines over to Lebanon. Now, the smallest combat unit in Marine Corps is the fire team. You've got 3 privates and a corporal. Corporal's in charge of the 3 privates. He said, Warren, you could be my fire team leader. They had so many lieutenants trying to get transferred to the 2nd Division that you would have lieutenants taking the job of a corporal. And he would have been the squad leader as a major. He said, "Get out of here." He didn't say get out of here, but it was the polite way of saying our meeting is over. So I left. None of us got transferred to the 2nd Division. They had enough lieutenants and privates. But I thought that was a rather humorous thing, so I obviously remembered it. And he died as a lieutenant colonel. And I have on my bucket list to go to the city where he's buried, take a picture. And I've been putting it off for no good reason. So now that I'm mentioning it publicly, when I come back next spring, I will have a picture of, if he has a tombstone, I'll have a picture of it. I don't know why he died. I don't know what he died of. But he was squared away. And this winter, because I was thinking about him, I went and got the movie Sands of Iwo Jima. He played himself in the movie.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Now, he was not as famous as John Wayne, but I recognize both of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So I'm sure there are lots of people that were very famous that were famous after I knew them. Doesn't make any difference. They were just grunts. So eventually I came out of the Marine Corps, then I came back here. We have 2 boys, both went in the military. The oldest, Stephen, graduated from Wake Forest, Army ROTC, and his MOS was air defense. Air defense is like sitting on the ground and watching grass grow or waiting for a missile to come in. Well, that's not my boy. He applied for schools. He applied for jump school, and he applied for flight school. And he got orders to report to jump school. He became a paratrooper. And before he got transferred to the paratroopers, he got sent to flight school. And he finished in the top 3 of his class. When you get that high, then you get your choice of what kind of a helicopter you want to fly. He wanted to fly multi-engine. He got it. He flew CH-36s or 37s. Did 2 tours in Korea, peacetime. Went to Fort Rutger, Alabama, where the Army personnel went to flight school. Became an instructor pilot. After that, they sent him to a university in St. Louis. He was a ROTC instructor. And then he got a master's. He came out, went to law school, became a lawyer. And while he was an instructor, the second son, Michael, he wanted to be a jet pilot. I happened to have a friend that ended up a 2-star general. So I asked Jerry Larson, Jamestown boy, if he'd write a letter of recommendation. He did. He didn't know my son, but he wrote a nice letter. Michael got accepted into Air Force flight school. And one day he went in to see the recruiter. Michael says, I may have had a couple of drinks that afternoon. The Air Force guy was not there, but the Marine recruiter was there. So he went in to see the Marine recruiter, and he said something like, what do you guys have for flight programs? And he said, the Marine recruiter sort of, no, I got one here. They talked and they talked. Mike made an application to go to Marine Corps, got accepted, and off he went to Quantico first. And while he's in Quantico, the Air Force recruiter calls and says, okay, we have the information on the time for Michael to report in. And Betty took the phone call and she said, well, he's already reported in. No, he can't be. I just have the orders here to ship him to this Air Force base. Oh, he went to the Marine Corps. There was no problem. Jerry accused me of doing something nasty, but I didn't really do anything nasty. I didn't do anything at all. I just sired a boy. And he had good time in the Marine Corps. Went to Desert Storm. And before that, he had told me that there's a problem with the helicopters that the Marines were using, Cobras. He said if you fill them up with gasoline, they'll be so heavy you can't put any ammunition in. Or if you fill them up with ammunition, if you could get gasoline in, aviation fuel, they won't fly. It's too heavy. Well, I didn't like that. I wanted my boy to have a full complement of ammunition and gas, so I wrote a letter. I wrote a letter to a guy that you've never heard of called Al Gray. Al Gray was the commandant of the Marine Corps. And I told him the problem, and I got a nice letter back from him typed out, and then I got about 4 or 5 sentences afterwards. A little bit later, I got a phone call from Mike. Pop, who you been writing letters to? The chain of command went up, but it also came down. And at some point, the letter got to his commanding officer, asking him, I guess, what's the story with this? I don't know what rank he was. Pilot Erickson in your unit. And Mike didn't know about the letter. He said, I don't know what my dad did. So I told him. And then General Gray's letter said, we know of the problem. We get what the experts have drawn up for specifications. And we're having the specifications changed. In future, Cobra helicopters will be able to take off with a full load of fuel and ammunition. I said to myself at one point, I'm going to save that letter. I may have it, but if I have it, I don't know where it is. Yeah. But Al Gray had the reputation. He was a Mustang. Do you know what a Mustang is? Okay. He was a Mustang, and he had a reputation of being for the troopers. And that was evidence to me that he had a concern for his troopers. So that's the kind of man you want in charge of the Marine Corps. So, take a break.
Well, we're going to drop a name here before we let you go, and that is, you mentioned the fact that you had dinner with and listened to General William Westmoreland.
Oh, forgot about that. Okay.
Small name.
Yes. Now, I mentioned earlier the officer in charge of the non-commissioned officer school, Richard Rose. We did a lot of things together. We came out of the Marine Corps about the same time. Rich had come from Fredonia, Pennsylvania. I don't even know where that is. But he stopped in one day and he said, well, we socialized and we had dinner. He says, you want to go bust a few caps? I'm sure you don't know what that means. He was on the Marine Corps pistol team. And you go out, you're busting caps. I had a 4.55 instead of a 45. I had a 4.55. So we went down, wherever it was. There was a reserve Marine unit. We're shooting bullets, having a lot of fun. And we kept in contact. And one day he called and he said, you'd like to come down for dinner. At this point, he's the president of Alfred University. I said, yeah, we'll come down. Why? Well, I have a guest speaker. I think you might enjoy meeting him. I said, who's that? General Westmoreland. Well, at that time, Westmoreland didn't really have a bad reputation. He got a bad one later because they found out he was just multiplying the body count. But we went down and had dinner with the general and some other people. I don't know who they were. And then we went to the lecture and heard the lecture, and I don't know what the lecture was about now. But he was an impressive looking man. Big square jaw, talked nice, looked good. And then eventually Rich left Alfred, became president of RIT. And I can tell you a story about him. It's got nothing to do with me. He was somehow involved with the Department of Defense. And he was also CIA. And one year he went with a group to Istanbul, and he had personal security. And he didn't like security. I mean, he was an aggressive guy. He was a Marine. He snuck out from the hotel. He went down to the Casbah, the bazaar, whatever they call that place where they have all the shops. And all of a sudden, or shortly after, his security found out his man was missing. People thought he had been kidnapped. Mm-hmm. They called out the Istanbul police. They called out the military units. They're going all over the city. Where is this man? Where might he be? Eventually he showed up. Well, I just went downtown. But he was in trouble for a while. But not big trouble. He had the reputation of getting to be a full colonel, the fastest of any man in peacetime. Mm. Eventually, the students at RIT found out he was CIA, and they started demonstrating. He said, I'm out of here, I quit. I don't need it. He had done a lot of work for his government, so he retired. He went to Florida. We got together in Florida. He was about 50 miles away from us. He had his weapon with him. I didn't have mine with me in Florida. He died in April. But I was, pretty good to be on the pistol team, and he had an interesting life. Just a regular person, except some regular persons aren't really regular. So that was the experience with the other officer at the 1st Marine Division schools.
This is a fascinating story, as always, as were the first ones we had down here. So if you kind of reflect on your Marine experience, you reflected on it favorably when you're in general terms, but can you, just as we wrap this up here, sort of articulate the legacy of this and how that couple-year experience in the Marines affected you the rest of your life? Kind of a legacy.
Well, I think most people that I knew when we were 18 to 20, we weren't too structured. We had our parties, we went to school. Marine Corps teaches you discipline. And we had the expression right way, wrong way, Marine Corps way. You had to learn the Marine Corps way. But in life you have to learn a certain way. You had to learn the life of the lawyer. The electrician has to learn the life of the electrician if they're going to be good. And not all Marines did that. We had people who got in trouble. We got rid of them. But it's a discipline. And I think we would have been a better country if we could have kept the draft. You sure learned you needed help on many occasions, and you learned how to help other people. When we were in that first school in the Marine Corps, at Quantico, we had some enlisted men with us. And they knew, they'd been in the Corps for years. We had to, for example, tear apart a machine gun. They would give a class on it, and they say, okay, now go do it. Well, if you didn't know how to do it, you were going to be in a problem. They would help. And they told us different ways, to keep your body in shape, different exercises to do. That doesn't normally happen, as far as I know, in normal life. And I think there's a camaraderie with Marine Corps. One year, I was in charge of the program for my high school graduating class. And I had a few things lined up. At a certain point, I said, okay, I want now everybody who was in the Army to stand up. They stood up. Now let's see the Navy personnel. Air Force. Okay, now the Marines, stand up. Nobody knew I was going to be doing this. Okay, you Marines, come on up here. We're going to sing the Marine Corps hymn. Up they came, we sang the Marine Corps hymn. Do any of you other servicemen want to come up and sing your song? No. We sang the Marine Corps hymn. We went on hikes. They had us sing different songs. One of them was Marine Corps hymn. I travel frequently with a hat that says USMC. A lot of people come up. Hi, Marine, what unit? Well, there's a spirit there. They always talk the esprit de corps. And I think we should have more of that. I think we should have it in the Navy and the Air Force. But we don't have it, and I don't know why. But somehow it gets indoctrinated into an awful lot of the Marines. I'm sure a lot of them say, I didn't like it. I went through it. I had, at one point, the job of re-enlistment officer. And I had to try to talk these young guys into re-enlisting. More than one said to me, Lieutenant, if you get me a war, I'll stay in. And that was an attitude that I didn't have. But if I was going to be in a war, all right, I wanted to be a Marine. But that's the kind of life they wanted. They want that kind of a life. They wanted to be with Marines. I can't explain it because I'm just not that close to it. But I saw it and I heard it. I can remember the small things. Betty and I were late for a plane. We're in an airport. I had my cover on. We call the cap a cover in the Corps. Airport employee that had a shuttle came over. Hey, Marine, you need a ride? Yeah, I got a plane. He took me down. He said, Semper Fi. I said, were you in the Corps? Yes, he'd been in the Corps too. Now, maybe he would have done it for anybody that had a Navy cap on. I don't know. But I do know he helped take care of a Marine.
Yeah.
So maybe that's as close enough as I can come to a carry through life opinion, result of the time in the Corps.
Perfect. You're the best. I appreciate this. This is wonderful. Thanks for coming in. Thanks for these stories.